Well, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Alina Hernandez, and I created this program called Transitions, Life Skills for Adulthood as part of my doctoral capstone project for occupational therapy. I was under the guidance of a mentor, Najiba Hlemi, and my professor, Dr. Shantaria Carr. So a little bit more about me. Like Angela just said, I'm a recent graduate from Howard University's OTD program, and I'm currently working as an occupational therapy specialist at the Foster and Adoptive Parent Advocacy Center here in Washington, D.C. I'm working on kind of helping with resource parent trainings, kind of similar to this one, and scheduling some more of our resource parent and foster youth events. I also have experience in research at the Center of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, at Howard, where I was researching generational wealth and aging in place in the Black community, as well as the mentorship needs of Black and Latinx occupational therapy students. So just a little bit about me so you know who's talking here. And before we begin, I want to just kind of lay this disclaimer out that even though I did just graduate from OT school, I am not yet a licensed or registered occupational therapist. So this module is just to kind of provide you all with support and resources, and not to serve as a true OT intervention. And throughout this whole time, feel free to kind of jump in with questions, comments, if you want to raise your hand or comment in the chat. I can see a few people on the screen, but I'll kind of see, if people raise their hand, I can probably see if people have questions.
Yeah, and I can help keep an eye on the chat as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, a little bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about today. So again, we're going to talk about occupational therapy. Of course, you've heard about that before. Then we'll dive into a little about the science behind today's session, kind of giving you some evidence-based research to kind of back it up. And then we'll go into kind of two parts of this, the importance of the aspect of self and then interpersonal skills. And we'll have a few activities for each section and then questions and feedback at the end, but again, we can kind of discuss throughout. All right, so what is occupational therapy? I know many of you have heard this before, but as occupational therapy, almost OTD, recent graduate, I love to share the meaning of occupational therapy, especially kind of what it means in a community-based setting. So such as Kinship Caregivers Connect or my organization, FAPAC, we kind of want to promote the health and wellness of different communities' needs by providing resources and education and working with individuals to set personal goals. So this module is based off of 8 key outcomes that we have for occupational therapy: participation, health and wellness, quality of life, prevention, role competence, occupational performance, and occupational justice. Alrighty here. So as I said, this course was created for my doctoral research project. And through my research, as well as I was able to survey foster, kinship, and adoptive parents from my organization, FAPAC, and kind of get their feedback on some skills that they wish their youth had when entering adulthood, or what they had wished they had as youth entering adulthood. So through the research, I found that having tangible life skills, secure interpersonal relationships, a healthy living environment, and strong self-efficacy skills all can lead to a successful transition to adulthood for our youth. All right, and who here has ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You can go ahead and kind of raise your hand. Okay, yep, I see a couple nods, a couple hands going. Perfect, perfect. So, as I mentioned before, stable housing is crucial in beginning that transition into adulthood. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of talks about that we need to have our physiological needs met first before we can make our way up the pyramid to safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and then finally self-actualization. So I have a video that I want to kind of share with you all to kind of give you a little bit more details about Maslow before we kind of continue on this presentation.
According to Maslow, human needs were arranged in the form of a hierarchy, with physiological survival needs at the bottom, and the more creative and intellectually oriented self-actualization needs at the top. Needs lower down in the hierarchy must be satisfied before individuals can attend to higher needs. Our most basic need is for physical survival, and this will be the first thing that motivates our behavior. Physiological needs are biological requirements for human survival, such as air, food and drink, shelter, clothing, warmth, and sleep. Once an individual's physiological needs are satisfied, the needs for security and safety become salient. For example, emotional security, financial security, law and order, and freedom from fear. After physiological and safety needs have been fulfilled, the third level of human needs is social and involves feelings of love and belonging. Belonging refers to a human emotional need for interpersonal relationships, affiliating, connectedness, and being part of a group. Examples of belonging needs include friendship, intimacy, trust, acceptance, receiving and giving affection, and a sense of connection. Esteem needs are the fourth level in Maslow's hierarchy and include self-worth, accomplishment, and respect of others, and the need to be a unique individual. Self-actualization needs are the highest level in Maslow's hierarchy and refer to the realization of a person's potential, self-fulfillment, seeking personal growth, and peak experiences. Individuals may perceive or focus on this need very specifically. For example, one individual may have a strong desire to become an ideal parent. In another, the desire may be expressed athletically. For others, it may be expressed in paintings, pictures, or inventions. Although Maslow did not believe that many of us could achieve true self-actualization, he did believe that all of us experience transitory moments, known as peak experiences. Such moments associated with personally significant events such as childbirth, sporting achievement, and examination success, difficult to achieve and maintain consistently.
Alrighty, so
According to Maslow,
that was just to give you a little bit of a background information about Maslow's and kind of how we want to start off with that foundation of having a safe housing to build our way up to self-esteem and self-actualization. And we'll kind of talk about the aspect of self in a little bit. Before we do that, I want to talk to you all about the stages of psychosocial development. So since we are talking about teenagers and young adults right now, I want to share this theory so you all can have a better understanding of psychosocial development that occurs during this age. So there's a theorist called Erik Erikson who discussed psychosocial development from infancy up until older adulthood. So during infancy, the child is in the stage of trust versus mistrust. So they're trying to figure out, okay, can I trust my caregiver to feed me, clothe me, provide me with my essential nutrients and needs that I need to survive, or can I not? And as you age, you work your way up through the different levels. And right now, looking at our teenagers and young adults, we're in the identity versus role confusion part. So this is the fifth stage that occurs during these adolescent years, and the youth often are asking themselves at this time, who am I? And a lot of times youth have difficulties with commitment, maybe have some unstable mental health issues going on, may have a weak sense of self or lack the confidence. And oftentimes adolescents must decide who they are and may experience a kind of like crisis situation to change or solidify their young personalities. This can be hard for parents and caregivers as well, because your youth is going through a time where they want to be individual, have autonomy, kind of be on their own, but they also really need help from caregivers and parents to kind of provide that guidance towards healthy and safe decisions. So we'll talk about it a little bit more in the next couple slides. All right, so what is executive functioning? Who has heard of executive functioning before? Some raise of the hands here. Perfect. Yep. Awesome. All right, so executive functioning, it's a set of cognitive processes that help people set and achieve goals, solve problems, and manage emotions. So this all occurs in the most frontal part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. And actually, this part of our brain is not fully developed until we're about in our mid-20s. So you have to keep that in mind when we're caregiving or parenting for kind of these teenagers and young adults. Their frontal lobe is not completely formed, so all of their executive functions that occur in this frontal lobe are not working to their 100% capacity at this time. So there's actually 8 different components of executive functioning. I'll go through them kind of quickly with you all so we can discuss. First is impulse control. So being able to kind of think before acting on an emotion, which brings us to emotional control, keeping those feelings in check. If you compare, say, a 3-year-old who, gets a toy taken away and immediately bursts out crying, perhaps it's in a public place, in the grocery store, compared to maybe a teen who you tell them no for something in a public place, grocery store, they might have a little bit more emotional control to not lash out in that moment, or maybe not. They may also struggle with that as well. Having flexible thinking. So being able to adjust behavior to unexpected changes. Working memory, keeping that information kind of in their mind and using it actively. And then we'll talk about self-monitoring, planning and prioritizing, as well as task initiation. They kind of all go together. So self-awareness on how one is doing in the moment, planning and prioritizing, setting and meeting those goals, and then task initiation to actually start taking action on those started tasks. So I'll give you a little bit of an example too for self-monitoring. Say you have a child who gets out of school at 4 p.m. and then has homework to do and has soccer practice at 6 p.m. Are they able to kind of self-monitor themselves? Okay, am I able to complete my homework, plan and prioritize to do maybe an hour of homework before I have to get ready for soccer practice? That's the planning and prioritizing part. But then can they actually initiate the task to do that homework in that time period allotted for them? So a lot of our youth might have trouble with these 8 executive functions. And so we can kind of help guide them through these with some of the strategies I'll show you in the next few slides. So a few questions you can kind of ask yourself to see maybe if your youth may be struggling with executive functions. First question, does my child stick to a daily routine? Are they able to kind of, get up, get ready for school, brush their teeth, eat breakfast, pack their bag, and head out the door every day, kind of consistently without any issues? Can my child accurately estimate how long it might take them to complete a task? So that's kind of very similar to that planning and prioritizing. Can they really think, can I do a 3-page paper in, an hour and a half, or do I need a few days to kind of work on that? And then also, can my child complete these daily tasks without reminders from parents or teachers? So, for our young kids, it's okay for us to kind of be giving them those reminders on a daily basis. But as we're entering, teenager and adulthood, we want them to kind of be doing that on their own, to have that own sense of autonomy and self-initiation to do those tasks without having someone telling them to do so. So the 3 kind of main aspects that I found through my research that were very important for entering adulthood is the aspect of self, interpersonal, and then life skills. So today we'll just talk about the aspect of self and interpersonal skills to kind of really open up the discussion with you all and dive a little bit deeper into these 2 categories. So the aspect of self. Aspect of self kind of relates to self-identity, self-esteem, and self-determination. So self-identity influences people to prioritize certain beliefs, ideas, values, and actions. Self-esteem is how we perceive ourselves and the confidence in our abilities, and determination and how people choose and set their own goals and are involved in making life decisions and advocating for themselves to reach those goals. Also self-efficacy, which is not on this slide, but I think it's important for us all to be aware of, is the ability to master a situation with, favorable outcomes. The concept of, I can versus I can't. Do I have that confidence to be able to really put in the work and get the job done? Or do I think, no, I can't do it, so I'm not even going to put in the work? During this time, forming identity might be tricky for some of our youth. So we can kind of discuss some ways we can promote self-identity for our youth in the future. So how can we as caregivers promote self-identity? So since identity is based off of past experiences, we want to encourage self-reflection. So that can be self-reflection on, like I said, experiences, choices, previous accomplishments, fears, goals, or prayers. We also want to be able to provide emotional support and social approval and assist the youth in developing their own coping mechanisms to kind of help with that self-identity. It's important for children and youth to kind of see these healthy behaviors being modeled by adults. So for example, if a child or youth sees their parent or caregiver talking to themselves in the mirror and giving them, positive self-talk, I can do this, I am enough, I am great, they might be more likely to do those things on their own. They might subconsciously pick up that tip and say, okay, I saw, grandma doing that, maybe I should try as well. Or if you kind of talk to them about, hey, I'm going to do some self-talk in the mirror. You want to come join? Might work better for the younger kids, but we can try with the teens as well. All right, so now I have a little activity for you all. I'm going to talk about how to promote self-identity through journaling or discussing emotions. So I have some journaling prompts here that you can use to either start a conversation with your youth or have them engage privately in a journal. Sometimes it's hard for youth to talk about these kind of deeper emotions to their family members or caregivers kind of right there in the moment. and they may benefit from kind of talking about this stuff in a journal, to a therapist, on their own. As long as they're getting it out of their system in some way, it'll be beneficial. So I want to ask you all a couple of these questions. If anyone wants to raise their hand and kind of answer, what are some of your values? What motivates you in life? What does self-reflection mean to you? Go ahead and raise your hand or put it in the chat. Having children in your home can be a great motivator. You know, they're going to be there asking for things, and they're going to motivate you to do those things. Excellent, excellent. Maybe we'll do one more question of what does self-reflection mean to you? What else kind of want to share a little bit of what self-reflection means to them, or how they do some self-reflection on their own time or with their children or their youth. I can go first. I think for me, self-reflection is kind of looking back on the things that I've done and kind of looking at it with a little kind of, what is that word? Those little microscopes, kind of looking at a little harder on myself, what I've been through, what I've done, and say, you know, were those things in my best interest or not, and kind of reflecting on those to make better decisions in the future. Thank you all for sharing so much. I really appreciate that. So next, we're going to talk about how to promote self-esteem in our youth. So to build self-esteem, youth need to feel confident and have mastery in the skills and in their goals. So what is mastery? Mastery is having a sense of control over the aspects that control their life. So being able to find activities for your youth or your child where they have a strong sense of mastery, or feel like, you know, I can do that instead of I can't do that, is going to help increase their self-esteem. So some ways to promote self-esteem is journaling, like we talked about before, or tracking emotions. Oftentimes it might be hard for youth to kind of journal in a notebook on their own time, but having them just type it down in their notes app. There's also plenty of apps that I've seen online where they can kind of put a sad face, medium face, or a happy face and talk about how they're feeling that day. And then they can kind of look back on that reflection, you know, self-reflect in a few days and say, hey, you know, last week I had 3 sad faces. What was going on during that week? Why was I feeling that way? Maybe next week we'll have a couple more happy faces. But kind of giving them a little bit of options and different opportunities to journal and self-reflect in kind of different mediums may be beneficial. Oops, sorry, one more. We can also be doing weekly check-ins with your youth. So kind of having simple conversations with them, talk about their day, talk about what they've been struggling with. We'll talk about it in the future about how to kind of open up that conversation door, but that can also be a way for you to kind of see where your youth is at. And also when your youth is setting goals, we'll talk about that in a minute, being able to provide praise to them for each goal that they meet is going to really help increase their self-esteem. So for example, if your youth is saying to you, hey, grandma, I really want to get at least a 90 in my math class this year. Okay. And you see them sitting down every night at the table, doing their homework, putting in that work, you know, trying really hard to get that A. Maybe they only get an 85, but you see them putting in that work and that effort daily. Praise them for that. Say, hey, I see you working hard towards that goal. You're doing an excellent job of studying for this test. If you don't get an A, that's okay, but I see you, I see the work and the effort that you're putting into it, okay? And that's all that matters. Next, we're going to dive in on how to promote self-determination. So having internal or intrinsic motivation can help sustain our passions and goals. And external motivators oftentimes do help. However, when we are talking about our youth and our young adults, we really want to have them try to develop their own sense of internal motivation so that they can follow through with their goals and tasks without the need for that additional support or external motivation. So we want to try to encourage youth to think of natural consequences for their actions that may occur, while also providing youth with, you know, responsibilities, choices, and more independence when appropriate. So instead of providing, you know, an external, non-related, what we call, you know, punishment for their poor decisions, allow them to really kind of think through those consequences that in the end will kind of teach them more responsibility and accountability and allow them to have more independence in their decision making. So when we're looking at goal setting, especially using SMART goals, we want to make sure that we're using them to create autonomy, competence, and relatedness. That's also important for our youth's development. So let's go ahead and create a SMART goal together. Who has heard of SMART goals? Raise of a hand, anyone? Sydney, yep. Learned a lot about that in school, for sure. So for those who do not know, SMART goal stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So I kind of want to work with you all on creating a short-term goal for ourselves to kind of practice goal setting. So I want to give you all the example of, for me, my specific is I want to exercise more. That's my goal. So let's kind of break it down and see how we can narrow down the specific, the measurable, the attainable, realistic, and timely. So for the first one, can I give you a little bit of an example? When I say I want to exercise, does that mean I want to go running more? Does that mean I want to lift weights more? I want to do yoga. So kind of being specific in that goal can really help narrow it down and really kind of guide everyone through the steps that need to be done. So specific, let's say I want to do yoga. Okay. For measurable, we want to think of how often I should be doing this. So anyone want to give me kind of a number of how often I should be doing yoga, weekly or monthly or yearly?
Twice a week?
Okay, yeah, twice a week. Okay, perfect. So we'll put that in for measurable, twice a week. And then let's look at the next one, attainable. So making sure that it's attainable and these kind of go together, realistic for our schedules and our own time. So for me in the summertime, I have a lot more downtime than I would during the school year. So I think for me, 2 times a week, I think that's doable and manageable for me. But if this was, say, during my finals week at the end of school in April, I probably would have said, no, 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 no. I can maybe do 10 minutes of yoga, you know, once a day, but not a lot. So kind of keeping in mind that the goals have to be attainable and realistic for you and your child and your lives, and they can be altered to kind of make sure that fits. But when we're making goals, make sure they are attainable and realistic, That way we can actually see the progress being made towards those goals and see a greater chance of having a successful outcome. All right. And then timely. Okay. Do I want to exercise more by the end of the week? I want to exercise more by the end of the summer or the end of the year. I say maybe for me, since my summers are kind of relaxed and slow, I'll say it's going to be an end of the summer goal. That's kind of how I'm going to frame it, just for right now. And goals can always kind of be edited or changed depending on different circumstances that pop up. Say I'm going on vacation, or say, my cousin's coming into town and I can't exercise twice a week, that's okay. Goals can be kind of edited and managed, it's up to you and your child to kind of work through it together to see what works best for you. So in the end, I think the goal we have here is going to be, I'm going to do yoga twice a week for the summer for about 3 months in order to get some more exercise going throughout my body. Okay, I think that's pretty realistic, attainable, timely. I think we can do it. Thank you all for helping out with that. Now let's talk about interpersonal skills. So during my time at my capstone placement, which was actually where I'm working now, the Foster and Adoptive Parent Advocacy Center, I was able to actually interview and survey resource parents to kind of talk about what their needs have been. And a lot of the feedback that I got was, how can we help our transition age youth? How can we help them enter adulthood, be on their own, really prepare them for the real world, basically. So as I mentioned before, having strong interpersonal skills is a protective factor against poor adulthood outcomes, such as homelessness, substance abuse, or delinquency. And again, you all are the experts in parenting. I am not yet a parent. I am just an OT graduate, but I'm kind of just here to provide you with the kind of research that I have learned in my short experience here, really kind of hear from you all what else you think, is important for our youth in entering adulthood. So permanency doesn't necessarily mean these children or youth are going to be in your homes, for the rest of your lives or their lives. It just means that you'll be that emotional support for them when they need it. So children have a right and a need to live and develop in safe and secure and permanent families. So we mentioned before Maslow's, developing in a safe and secure housing, having those safety needs met. Then you can work your way up to kind of that love and belongingness and increasing that self-esteem. So kind of all builds off of each other. And next up, they have the right to live with parents and caregivers so they can love and trust. So permanency overall can help with developing healthy and secure relationships with not only adults, but peers as well, and adults in the community, teachers, authority figures, and of course, parents and caregivers as well. Permanency can help maintain that deep attachment to caregivers, um, as well as reduce potential stressors during displacement. And displacement can also mean just times of transition. So when they maybe are moving out of their, long-term home into their first apartment, or they're starting, college for the first time and moving, across the country. So having, a support system where they can lean on and say, hey, I'm going through kind of a tough time right now. Can you kind of be my support? Having that is very, very important for them, especially during times of transition. What can resource parents do to help support these interpersonal relationships? So what you can do is you can start to discuss some ways to keep that close communication with your youth, no matter where they are. So even if they're, maybe for the summer, they're at grandma's or uncle's or dad's house, maybe kind of say, hey, check in with me, nightly or every other day, just so I can know how you're doing, talk about your day, just, see how you're doing. But making sure you have those conversations kind of before they're, leaving care or leaving your house, will be important to kind of make sure you have that foundation for the future. And reminding them that you are their support emotionally, guiding them towards safe and healthy decisions. So what you can do is kind of schedule some time to sit and just talk with them. When possible, my family, oftentimes it would be a Sunday evening where no one had school or sports or work. We could all sit down at the table and eat, a meal and talk about the best and worst parts of your day. So that was kind of an expectation that we had in my family. Like, no matter what, you had a bad day. Okay, we're going to talk about it in a minute. So we kind of always had that weekly, depending on different activities and, things like that, scheduling changes, we tried to have at least a once a week meeting and check-in just to see how we all are. Making sure you choose a time that works well for you and your family is also very important. You don't want to be kind of asking your child, how was school? When they're running between different activities, trying to go to soccer and then finish their homework, they're like, I can't answer that right now. I've got a lot going on. So picking a time that works for you is important as well. I want to ask everyone here, what has been the best and worst part of either your day or your week so far? Thank you all for sharing. I really appreciated that. All right, so yeah, a couple more examples, talking to your youth at the dinner table, what music are you interested in listening to? Or kind of talking to them about a show that you think that they might be interested in, something that you've seen on Netflix that sounds good to kids, kind of bringing up topics that might entice them will kind of help open that door of communication as well. And just some kind of important reminders we want to just keep in the back of our head is being sure to be open with your child or youth. So the more that, parents, caregivers open up and share their own thoughts and feelings and experiences, the more comfortable the youth or child may feel to share their thoughts and feelings. Oftentimes, youth may think I'm alone in this world and this experience is so unique, it never happened to anyone else before, tell them about the time where, you and your friend in middle school had a fight or a falling out, and tell them how you maybe handled it, maybe in the best or not the best way, giving them that, relatedness and saying, I've been there before. It happens to all of us. You're not alone can kind of help boost that self-esteem and feel a little bit more of sense of belonging. Also, allowing them to know that you are a safe space, that you are free of judgment, that they can talk to you about anything without, fear of retaliation or anything like that. But just, making sure that they know if anything that they tell you is, dangerous or life-threatening or, harmful, you'll have to, report it to someone else. But for the most part, keeping that really trusting and confidential relationship with your child can help build that, confidence between you to open up even more about harder and more difficult conversations.
And really quick, Yaya said in the chat, we pillow talk. I love that.
I love that. I love like before bed. Yes, that's perfect. The child is relaxed, youth is relaxed. We're about to go to bed, kind of getting those last thoughts off our mind before nicely falling to sleep. That's a great idea. Any other comments or questions just so far at all? All right, and then this brings us to last and kind of my favorite, the feelings wheel. So this is something that I have used before with youth and also children who might have difficulty identifying their emotions. I know for me in the past, it's been very hard for me to identify the specific emotion that I feel. Oftentimes I'm just telling people, yeah, I just feel bad, or I just feel off, or I don't feel so good. And I can't really name that emotion. So when I was shown this feelings well for the first time, I was like, oh, wow, I can, look at it and say, I'm feeling bad. Okay. Am I stressed, tired? Maybe I'm a little tired. Am I unfocused or sleepy? Maybe. So being able to kind of narrow down those big or kind of generic emotions can help, open up that door of communication and being able to kind of manage those emotions as well. Adults must help children use, these cognitive strategies to help cope with stress and challenging emotions. Identifying the emotion is the first thing you're going to want to do with your child to understand, where they're at, how they're feeling, and then start a conversation of maybe why they're feeling this way and how to manage these emotions. So being able to talk about it, just how to have an open and deep, meaningful conversation about their feelings, their honesty, reassuring the children that, that they're safe where they are now. If they had a bad day at school, reminding them, okay, well, we're home now. That situation's in the past. It happened. Let's talk about it. Let's see how we can go and move forward in the future. Also, allowing children to kind of tell you the events of what happened in their own words can help them kind of problem solve their own emotions. Think about, okay, what am I really trying to say, instead of us kind of telling them how they're feeling. Try to really listen to the things that they say and what they feel, because that's how they think they're feeling truly. And telling them, emotions don't often, go away overnight. If you're having a bad day, it might last for a couple days, and telling them, that's okay too, and we'll manage it and we'll work on it. But anyways, having the open door of communication will allow you to kind of build that trust with you one-on-one, build that foundation to self-esteem, loving belongingness, and then being able to kind of have that self-actualization on their own when they enter adulthood. So all these skills are very important for our youth entering adulthood, because sooner or later they are going to be not on their own completely, but maybe living on their own physically by themselves. Maybe they won't be able to kind of talk to you every night, before bed and talk about their emotions. So being able to start that stuff now and then give them these skills to kind of continue that in their future endeavors as young adults can be super, super helpful. Again, starting on early too. So if you have younger children as well, you can bring up this feelings wheel. I think Angela mentioned it last time. You can make a little bit of a smaller and less overwhelming feelings wheel. Or there's different kind of handouts that we can kind of show you too that have a little bit less craziness on this slide, kind of narrowing it down to a little more smaller emotions and more understandable emotions for our younger children. And that takes us to the end. So thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciated you all kind of giving your feedback, giving your best and worst parts of the day. It can be hard to share sometimes, but again, we're modeling for the youth, for the kids. So I thank you all for sharing and being part of this today.